Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. Thanks for joining us for the virtual launch of the US and Jamaican Women in EdTech Power Connect. Now, this program is funded by the Department of State's Economic Bureau and is intended to connect and provide a forum for women, both in the US and in Jamaica, who are looking to start or expand a business in the field of educational technology. Now, most of us know that this area is of particular importance now, but did you know that in a 2018 blog post, well-known Caribbean woman in EdTech, Ingrid Riley, on her Silicon Carib blog, did a post called Where Are the Caribbean EdTech Startups? Now, in that post, she identified the need for this industry, for this area, and also identified that there were only 4 companies, mostly male-led at the time, that were in existence and actually functional. Now, that hasn't changed much until this afternoon when we have this amazing program underway that will benefit 37 Jamaican women in addition to their US peers. My name is Latoya West Blackwood. I know that some of you online who are joining us, participants and our virtual audience, might know me as, Jamaica's book girl, word girl, a member of the creative industries. Those are some of the things I'm known for. But currently, I'm also an international consultant, and over the past 2 years, I have been focusing on digital storytelling, content strategy with regional and international companies, and some of them are actually looking at educational technology. Surprise! I'm also an advocate for gender equality, and this program is particularly important to me. I'm very happy that I was invited to participate by way of hosting the launch because we know that an investment in women, especially in underrepresented areas like technology, educational technology, and exploring the synergies with different areas of society can transform communities and countries. And that's what we're all about this afternoon. I want to extend a special welcome to all of our participants who are joining us via Cisco WebEx. Hello, I can see some of your beautiful faces. Very excited for you. And so we're excited to be launching this program with you joining us today. We're live streaming here from the US Embassy in Kingston, and we'll be joined shortly by John McIntyre, who is the Chargé d'Affaires here. And by video, we'll also have the pleasure of hearing from Jamaica's Minister of Education, Honorable Favor Williams, Education and Youth Information, as you know. She wanted to support this program today because it really means a lot, not just to her portfolio, but to national development, as you can imagine. Finally, we're going to be hearing from our American keynote speakers, Serene Noor Ali and Yulkendi Valdez. You're in for a treat hearing from these ladies. I can tell you because we have connected ahead of this program. And so they will be sharing their inspiring stories with you of success in terms of entrepreneurship, and they're very eager to share their experience in particular about EdTech with all of you and to hear from you as well. So please make a note of your questions for them while they are presenting because they really want to engage with you. It's not just about talking to you, but hearing from you as well. Serena and Yukandi will be kicking off a conversation that will continue over the course of several webinars. So it's not just about the launch today. You'll be hearing from them, but you will actually be a part of webinars that will come after this launch event. And they will address some of the common challenges, facilitate conversations about starting and growing your EdTech businesses. Topics will include, of course, most of us as women in entrepreneurship know about the big hurdle of access to finance, so they're going to be talking about that. They're going to talk about how to develop and market your EdTech product. You can't have, the best thing and keep it a secret. They're also going to be talking about intellectual property. And as some of you know, I'm also a champion in this area for copyright when it comes to publishing, which is my area. So I'm very excited to hear that you will be learning about protecting your intellectual property. And finally, you're also going to be hearing about a very, very important area, which is public-private partnerships. That is the way, right now, it has always been, but it has become even more important in a globally competitive environment and in spaces like Jamaica where we might have limited resources. And so you'll be hearing about that. The various US speakers taking part in this program are not only successful and knowledgeable, but they all share a passion for providing quality education through technology and increasing both gender parity and diversity in the sector. And this is extremely important because success, personal success, is not meaningful unless there is an impact on society, as most of us know. We have a lot to look forward to. And so I invite you to settle down, get ready, be excited to start this program. This is the launch of Power Connect, and it's an honor at this point in time for me to introduce John McIntyre, the Charge d'Affaires, as I said, here at the US Embassy. And for those wondering who this person is, he is, here in the script, guys, it's not me. It says, he is a person who is left in charge when there is no ambassador in place. So right now, we are going to hear from the most senior ranking US government official at the embassy. Before I hand over to him, just to tell you a little bit about him, he joined the US State Department in September 1999. He looks extremely young, so this might be a shocking fact to you. He assumed duties as Deputy Chief of Mission for the U.S. Embassy, Jamaica, August 3rd, 2019. I think some of you might remember that Devon House announcement that, made us all excited. And so he has the duties of Charge d'Affaires on January 20, 2021. Prior to his current assignment, he was in the region serving in the Trinidad and Tobago Embassy. He is a career diplomat in the Senior Foreign Service. Previous assignments include Managing Director for Resources for the Public Diplomacy, for the Undersecretary of Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs, a very, very long and varied career in areas like Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, Panama, all over. And he is a proud graduate of the University of Wisconsin-Madison. He's political science and communications major there. University of Kansas, master's in public administration, and I'm sure one of his most notable achievements for him is a family man who is married with 2 wonderful children. So now we're gonna hand over to John.
Thank you, LaToya. I really appreciate that introduction. I think it's a little too generous, but I appreciate that, especially the comments about my youthful parents. I'm not sure that's really true anymore. Good afternoon, everybody. I see you all on camera, so I'm going to wave. It's a real pleasure for me to be here today on behalf of the U.S. Embassy team to be launching this program, obviously joined by Minister Williams as well. The pandemic has challenged all of us, parents, teachers, school administrators, and most of all students, and I can say that from personal experience, who all deserve a quality education. This context has also compelled us to innovate and to find new ways of delivering education, even as we overcome this crisis. Many countries are struggling to do this, many countries. Here in Jamaica, in addition to the U.S. mission's over $600 million Jamaican dollars in COVID-related assistance, USAID, and I'm very proud of this initiative, has supported the government of Jamaica's One Laptop or Tablet per Child program by contributing more than 2,000 devices across the country. But what's clear is that the importance of the EdTech sector and the role of women entrepreneurs in this field has never been more apparent than it is right now. Women's economic empowerment is a top priority for the U.S. government. We know that the success of global economic recovery efforts depends on our ability to include all citizens in the economy, especially women, who own 42% of all U.S. businesses, employing 9.4 million workers. That's why we're here today, supporting women's economic rise and innovation in the education sector. The program we're launching today is funded through POWER, and we're the U.S. government, so we like our acronyms, providing opportunities for women's economic rise, a U.S. State Department initiative to support women's entrepreneurship and economic empowerment through our Bureau of Economic and Business Affairs. POWER helps women in the U.S. and abroad identify opportunities and develop competitive strategies in emerging sectors traditionally dominated by men. The goal is to create lasting connections between 37 Jamaican female EdTech entrepreneurs that we've recruited for this program with their peers who in the U.S. who are facing and overcoming similar challenges through a strong support network. Over the coming days, I really encourage each and every participant to make the most of this forum. Soak it all in, plan how you will use this network to propel your own business success in this area. I would like to end by thanking Minister Williams again for her support and LaToya for moderating this session as a innovative Jamaican woman entrepreneur herself. My appreciation also goes out to all our U.S. and Jamaican speakers who agreed to be part of this series of events, including Serene and Yokindi, who you'll hear from later, and who have very impressive resumes, who will also be a source of inspiration throughout this entire launch event. I wish you all a productive program. Remember, this Power Connect is just the beginning. It's about opening doors to opportunity through relationship building. And this is really the key part right here. We've set the stage, but the success is in your hands. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Chargé. And one of the most important things in this forum that I forgot to mention is that I am the founding and outgoing president of the U.S. Exchanges Alumni Association. That's a wonderful body that all, the people who benefit from State Department programs are able to come under that one umbrella as an alumni. And I'm wearing my pin. So thank you, Chargé, for those comments and for setting a really good tone for this launch with all those facts you shared just now and underscoring the importance of this program. We now have the pleasure of hearing from Jamaica's Minister of Education, Honorable Favor Williams, and she wanted to lend her support, as I mentioned earlier, to this program as a woman who has some background in finance and entrepreneurship herself, but also bringing that to the education portfolio right now and the importance of an initiative like this to powering Jamaica into the future starting right now. And so she is big on innovation in the education sector, and you'll hear from her in her comments. I'm just going to share, some quick facts about Minister in terms of a bio, and then we will go into a video presentation from her. Mrs. Williams is a chartered financial analyst by profession. She has an MBA with concentration in finance from the Wharton Business School at University of Pennsylvania. Many accolades in terms of her academic background, her business acumen, and she also served as the Chief Investment Officer of JMB Limited. So I'm sure that she also has an insight in terms of some of the things that will be covered in this program about access to finance, etc. And she would definitely be supporting this program because of the knowledge transfer that's going to be happening here. Now, skipping right through, because her resume, her bio is, very, very in-depth and full of accolades. So we're gonna just go down to the fact that she, her focus during some of her stints in finance was on fixed income security investments. And prior to serving at Wellington, she was a fixed income analyst at Northwestern Mutual Life Insurance Company. She also gained experience at Equitable Real Estate Investment in Chicago, so she has both local, regional, and international experience. And so now she is a government official, a government minister. In politics, we're looking forward to more women serving, changing policy, and supporting programs like this. And she is also a proud wife, married to Leo Williams, and they have 2 beautiful children. And so now we're going to hear from Minister in her comments, and we'll come back.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let me begin by acknowledging Mrs. Latoya West Blackwood, our moderator for this webinar launch, Mr. John McIntyre, Chargé, U.S. Embassy, Kingston, Jamaica, Shireen Noor Ali, founder, EdTech Woman, Yolkeni Valdez, co-founder and CEO, Forefront, all the participants in this virtual Women in EdTech launch webinar, members of staff at the United States Embassy here in Kingston, Jamaica, well-wishers, and everyone tuning in on this special occasion. I welcome and wholeheartedly endorse the United States and Jamaican Women in EdTech Power Connect program. POWER, which is the acronym for Providing Opportunities for Women's Economic Rise, is a very laudable goal to connect Jamaican and American women entrepreneurs in the education technology sector to share common challenges and success stories in starting and expanding their businesses. We know that these connections will lead to stronger businesses, better products, and more engaged students. It is important to note that technology is the fundamental building block of most future organizations, and EdTech is a timely initiative to encourage more and more women entrepreneurs to provide them with access to a supportive learning community. As you know, educational technology, or EdTech, is a combined use of computer hardware, software, and educational theory and practice to facilitate learning. In short, EdTech are companies that create educational technology. Information communication technologies are rapidly changing the local and global landscape, serving as a potent force for shaping and impacting the way people live, work, and communicate. ICTs are becoming a necessary tool for running a competitive business. The range of benefits that ICTs offer is extensive, including having better access to crucial information in areas such as business development, market and pricing information, product technologies, compliance, forecasts, and training. The EdTech industry is long overdue for a change, and the pandemic has given us a wonderful opportunity to do just that. Investors need to begin thinking more equitably about not only what they're investing in, but also who they are investing in. Women have been historically more involved in education, which may offer a competitive advantage for them by their being closer to the opportunities of innovation and disruption. Significant investment in digital skills is a major commitment of the Jamaican government. We note how the recent launch of coding in our primary and secondary schools is gaining traction among our students. They're learning for the first time how to write instructions for a computer, to have the computer execute specific tasks. We are creating the foundation for logical thinking and creativity in the tech world. We believe it is vital for the well-being of our economy that women play a central role in helping to drive the digital revolution. Women make up approximately half of the workforce, and it has already been proven that gender diversity in the workplace generates diverse thinking, which translates into greater innovation and improved company performance. If we're going to move the needle on investing in more founders, women must have larger and more significant roles in all aspects of business. So let me reiterate my gratitude to the United States Department of State Economic Bureau and Mr. John McIntyre, Chargé, and his hard-working team here at the United States Embassy for this important and timely initiative. My best wishes for a successful launch event, and for the women who have been selected for this great opportunity. Congratulations on your impact so far, and I look forward to tracking your progress over the coming years. Thank you.
No, thanks very much to Minister Williams for those remarks. And if I were the ladies on WebEx joining us, I would be all smiles right now, because that's a firm commitment from our very own Minister of Education, who, as I mentioned, has some background in finance and investment, and to me sounds very committed to the success of not only this program, but the women who are going to be leading the innovation and implementing the change. Now comes the time for the part of the program I think that's very exciting, when I get to introduce the keynote speakers. I would note as a disclaimer that the views of the speakers, and I mean, including me if I say anything, that you will hear from today are their own, and that they're not meant to represent the US government. So we're just having a conversation. What they present are their own views and experiences, not those reflecting the government, so that we're very clear. In many ways, our first speakers, Women in EdTech Network in the US, served as an inspiration for this program. If such a network exists in America, then maybe we can create one here in Jamaica, because we know there is increasing interest in the EdTech sector. And as I said to you, I gave you an example at the start of the program of our own Caribbean woman in tech, Ingrid Riley, who asked this question: where are the Caribbean EdTech startups? So I believe that in addition to the inspiration that our US speakers will give us, the inspiration has been here, and the moment has come, time come, as we would say. And so right now what we're exploring is, why not create linkages? Why not create links between these two networks that exist to support one another and to spur greater economic activity among US and Jamaican women entrepreneurs in this sector? And as somebody who has benefited from the likes of the Young Leaders of the Americas initiative, which is all about networking, I can tell you that what Serene is about to tell you about and deliver is going to be powerful and impactful. And having done some spy work on her myself, she's the real deal. Both speakers are, and so they're not just gonna be telling you what they think, but what they know. And that, I think, is very exciting. She's going to talk to us particularly about the importance of creating these networks and why it matters to you as a female entrepreneur. But before she joins us, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about our first speaker. So Serene Noor Ali is an entrepreneur with a background in social justice, and she's also the co-founder of Sleuth, look it up, a VC-backed startup that gives parents better directions on early childhood health. I think she referred to it as the Ways for her sector. And so leveraging her previous network, she's no stranger to the US Embassy or the US Department of State. She has helped startups and legacy institutions to manage and earn over 20 million through sales. We're talking about 20 million US dollars, strategic deals, and talent operations. Seeking to celebrate and collectively elevate the influence of women in education, she founded the EdTech Woman, which was recognized by Southwest by West Edu with their first ever Changemaker Award in 2015. Under the Obama administration, Serene managed a team that created and deployed the US first set of digital diplomacy products in Farsi. She also ran the US Department of State's Innovation Fund and incubating the driving innovation practices of over 100 embassies implementing education programs across the Middle East. Serene has formally studied 5 languages, worked in 7 countries, holds degrees from Brown, Harvard University, and is a fellow of the Ismaili Studies Institute in London. So I'm telling you, what you're about to hear is from somebody who has the experience, who has the international exposure, and who, most importantly, has the passion to see you succeed. Welcome, Serene. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Latoya. That's quite the introduction. So I hope I meet the expectations. Thank you to Sharjah McIntyre and the Honorable Minister Williams, and congratulations to all of you for all of your work. It is quite an honor to be with you here today. So today is Eid al-Fitr. It's the Muslim holiday that marks the end of the holy month of Ramadan. Growing up, this was the day that I would go to my house of prayers in the morning. I would put on South Asian clothes and I would get there, do prayers, and get to eat cake and basically just celebrate for the rest of the day. I used to get gifts from my uncles and aunts, and sometimes I was also allowed to skip school, which was pretty thrilling. The reason that I care so much about the power of networks is because I grew up in the best version of a network, which was a community in my community. And it was a community of a shared vision of what it meant to live well, to live ethically, to make the world better, and really to help each other. You know, we were a community of immigrants that came from all around South Asia. We were the first ones to get educated in the US. A lot of people had small businesses and everyone helped each other. It was the sense of, okay, we made it and we need to help each other succeed. And my worldview has been crafted completely around the idea of being a small part of a greater whole. I truly have no idea who I would be without this sense of collaboration and community. So I worked for the State Department for 5 years. And when I left DC to move to New York, I had to rebuild my community completely. My husband and I had met in London several years before, and he was new to the US, and both of us were new to New York. That first year was really difficult for me. People in New York, even though it was only like a 4-hour train ride from DC, were very, very different than my world in DC, which I had figured out how to navigate. But when I told people that I worked in the government, like they just gave me blank looks. They had no idea what to do with me. They didn't understand my skill set, and I got rejected at job after job after job. And I hustled. I hustled so hard that even now, when I think about how hard I hustled, I get tired just thinking about it. And one day, I met a woman named Natalia. And Natalia is the CEO of a company called Pipeline Angels. And embedded in who she is as a person is this idea of community and helping each other. And without knowing it, she completely changed my life because she opened up her networks to me. And all of a sudden, I found myself in touch and connected with some of the most ambitious, successful women in tech and media in the entire country. And it was all through the power of us being on a shared email list. And through that community, I kept up with trends in technology. I got new opportunities to speak. I got opportunities to learn about what people were dealing with at their job, and I got to meet other professionals. They were so generous with each other, the women in this community, and it felt like we were all part of a club. But when I look back to it, I realized that we had a shared goal, and that was really to help more women succeed. Eventually, I did land a job within education technology. And when I got there, I brought with me this passion for professional networks because I had been benefiting from it in such a short amount of time. And I saw, as you all know, that women have unbelievable influence in education as educators, as consumers, as administrators, as mothers, as caretakers. All these things had a confluence of influence that I felt like needed its own platform to elevate. And what I had noticed was that EdTech was different than other areas of tech. I was in a network where people were in consumer technology or like software for businesses. But when I looked at EdTech, I saw that there was just people connecting in different ways that weren't plugging into a broader system. And I wondered, I'm like, why isn't there a platform for all of these people to come together? And also, why were we not getting the credit we deserved? I started hearing and seeing and experiencing personally the bias in a system where women were not being recognized, but often being put down. And so that's how EdTech Women started, just as a small idea. I still remember I would come back from work and I was like sitting in the floor of like our very small New York apartment. And I was trying to figure out how to buy the URL EdTech Women and throw it up on a website. And it was an awful website. And I had this idea that maybe 30 women could gather for dinner at South by Southwest, which is one of the preeminent EdTech conferences in the US. And I got more signups than I thought. We had an oversubscribed dinner of 100 people. And I actually went through every single person's LinkedIn profile, took out the characteristics of that person, and then matched it to another person. Because what I had decided that we should do was facilitated networking between all of these women. It went better than I would have thought. We had senior level women attend. We had people newer to their career, and the facilitated networking ended up creating almost like a buzz in the conference. And it helped because people went into the conference knowing each other in a kind of more intimate way. But a critical person at that first event stepped into my life, and her name is Margaret Roth. My vision for EdTech Women, I couldn't see past the first dinner. And she came up to me and she said, you know what, like we can make this a thing. And so when I was thinking small, she saw greater potential and jumped on board to help me execute it. And she was the very first experience that I ever had with a co-founder, the importance of which I will get to later. So EdTech Women became the go-to space for women in EdTech, and we actually created a long-standing partnership with South by Southwest. Within 2 years, we had grown so much, and we were named the Changemaker of the Year Award of the Year in 2015. Margaret and I learned a lot from those early years. One, building a network can be a lot of work, but it doesn't have to be. At one point, I could not keep up with the demand. I was linking ticket sales for events in Chicago and Houston to my bank account, which just didn't end up making any sense. And at that point, I realized that my availability and my limited time was becoming a barrier to growth. And so we came up with the idea of open sourcing the EdTech Women brand. And this meant that anyone in the world could start an EdTech Women chapter as long as they adhered to a set of shared values, which include inclusivity, visibility, and impact. And having this lighter touch from Margaret and I meant that people in different cities could take EdTech Women and make it their own version. What it could look like in Kingston would look different than what it looks like in Tokyo, which has more of a focus on women in corporate settings. The New York chapter has a focus on the tech scene and incubation of companies. Austin tended to be more focused on K-12 education, just as Chicago was. Some of the best networks that I'm in have a lightweight focus on the structure and logistics and a heavyweight focus on enabling connections. The point is to create the avenues where people can get to know each other instead of stressing if every meeting will have dinner and drinks and who's going to pay for it. Reducing the barriers of organizing and focusing on the why, and it means that more of these networks are sustainable. I encourage you to think about building a network for women in EdTech and in Jamaica in a way that feels valuable, lightweight, authentic to what your opportunities and assets are, and most of all, joyful. Because if you bring joy into the network, people will still want to come, and that sisterhood starts getting generated. The benefits of creating a safe space to connect can't be overstated. When I started my company right now, which is called Sleuth, it marries children's health and machine learning, many of my connections that I forged through EdTech Women became invaluable. I've had introductions to top tier investors. People have offered distribution channels. I've gotten media opportunities, such as with Randy Zuckerberg and Harvard Business Review, that I had no business getting as a startup at that point that was not even 2 months old. And When I was working in EdTech, I could get an introduction to almost any education company that I needed because someone in the EdTech Women Network worked at those companies. And I, the point of a network in my mind is to turn it into a community. And it's almost you go through stages. You start connecting with each other. But if you cultivate and share and distribute trust equally amongst the nodes of people in that network, it becomes a community and we start getting the sense of we have shared goals together. As founders and women building companies, this kind of network is even more important. Being a founder is hard. It is lonely. It can be disheartening. And the system is often stacked against women. And in the US, particularly women of color. Having people around you who get it is critical. Margaret was my first understanding of what it meant to share leadership with another person. And I personally grew so much from working with her. For my startup now, I have a co-founder, Alex Leeds, who is incredible. And sharing the vision for what we want is critical. If that vision was only held up by my own two hands, I would have quit. It's just the amount of work we have as women. I'm a mom of two little girls. One of them has medical needs. It's the vision, the logistics, it's everything. And I, usually think of myself as a fairly independent, strong-willed woman, but I could not do what I do without my co-founders in my community. And so my point is your community of women, if you don't have a co-founder, or even if you do, can act as your co-founders because you're all building towards the vision of better education. And that means something. In fact, to me, it means everything. The fact that you have a shared vision. When you're working away at 3 a.m., knowing that someone else is out there who's just one text away gives you what you need to keep being ambitious and audacious. And that audaciousness and that ambition is what makes the greatest products in the world come out. I read something recently about how having a business or a startup isn't a choice. And what's implicit with that is that it's a calling because this is hard, and having that community of audacious, ambitious women around you, to me, is the golden ticket to making sure that your dreams are realized. And truly, we need your dreams. Everyone on this webinar, we need your dreams. And I hope that's something that you always remember. So how do you actually build community? I think the most important pieces are number one, to be relevant, and number two, to be brave. So get your values down. For us at EdTech Women, the most important value is inclusivity and staying strong in creating a space where people of all ages, backgrounds, and skills are seen, heard, and valued. And one of the things I had noticed in other women in tech communities was that people of different ages were not valued, actually. And I felt really committed to the idea that you could be newer to your career, you could be more experienced to your career, and that we could create a culture of sharing knowledge. And creating inclusivity is hard work. It often requires whoever's leading the group to cultivate the voices of the people who are quiet and asking respectfully for more space from the people who are less quiet and might be dominating. And so in that process, make sure that whatever connections and meetups or listserv that you have are relevant. Pick the topics that you all care about. Is it about work-life balance? Is it about financing? Is it about marketing? These kind of networks do require some level of structure, otherwise people leave. I think that if you focus on the transfer of knowledge and skills, that's a really strong way to start because otherwise none of us have time. I know that none of us on this call have time. So when we ask people to connect, we need to be respectful that they're getting something out of it. The second part about being brave is to make space for it. When I moved to New York, I found that I was constantly selling myself. I was always trying to prove how much I had accomplished and I had done, and it felt really awful because it never felt good enough. And at our first EdTech Women meetup, I wanted to create space for vulnerability. And so when we did the 3 rounds of facilitated networking, one of the first questions I asked was, Tell us something that you're proud of that isn't on your LinkedIn profile. And we got to hear about people's passions, people overcoming cancer and other health conditions, the love for their children, how they got into EdTech. And creating the signals that people's whole selves are welcome in the network is critical. And that starts building a practice and a culture of being able to share openly, vulnerably, and generously. I am open for questions, but connect with me on Instagram, and I'm happy to share more thoughts about networks in the US if that's useful to learn about. But I just hope that you realize how much influence and power you all have. Imagining that power and influence in a shared network of Jamaican women, it gives me goosebumps, and I would love to see it happen. And if I can help in any way, please do reach out. Thank you very much.
Well, I must say that it gave me goosebumps listening. I have quite a bit that I've noted here. I have a script. Guys in studio and women, don't panic, I'm not gonna go off, but I have to give you back the same energy that you gave to us. And so I'll start by saying that my presence here today is about community. Like you, I am a mother and a wife. I'm a mom of four, including twin girls. One of them has medical needs, and she had an emergency today. And because of community, I was able to balance what started off as a very chaotic day to be here. And so when you made that point about vulnerability, showing up as your whole self and being authentic, it really hit with me. And those participants who are on the call who know me will know that that's a part of my personal brand, which is authenticity and building community, because it's so important in all the innovation, in all the ideas that you will come up with, and the strategies. At the core of that has to be something deeper, right? And so I was just very moved by your sharing about that. Quite a few other things stood out to me as well that I would just like to touch on before jumping into the chat and seeing if there are any questions from our participants, who I'm encouraging you to just drop your questions in the chat as we go along for the speakers. But you started out by referencing someone who connected with you, who you were able to network with, and who opened a door, a window, a pathway that you didn't even know existed. Can you just tell us a little bit more about that in terms of, how did you get on that email list? What would you spoke about how awkward it was to kind of sell yourself, to say, I am Serene, I'm a Harvard graduate, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of us share that feeling as well. We're very accomplished, but particularly in certain cultural settings, as a woman, you're kind of made to small up yourself. So I don't know nothing about that. Everybody know me that I don't do the smalling up thing. But sometimes I know that some of us come across spaces and people that will kind of, say, you go in a corner and, stay there. Yeah. Tell me, how did you tap into that very first life-changing network, and how would you encourage the women on the call to kind of do that? What are some practical ways?
I think it's a great question. I think the age-old advice to go in with something you can offer is a great way to start. So with Natalia, she was looking to expand Pipeline Angels into DC, and I had just worked in DC, and I knew people that would want to know about what her leadership program offered. And so I first signed up to a newsletter about what was happening in tech in New York. And from that, I saw her name. I went on LinkedIn and I said, "Hi, Natalia, I'm Sareen. I just moved from Washington, D.C. Your network sounds really amazing. Let me know if you want some ideas about who would be interested in DC." And then we got on the phone and we just exchanged our stories. And because she knew I was looking for a job, and because she's hardwired to be generous, and I think it's important to find those people, she invited me to a dinner at someone's house. And that, I will never forget that dinner. It was so intimidating. I actually remember the woman who ran this network that I got into, like, it felt like I had to impress someone to date them, but it was clear to me that this woman was a boss, and it was very, like, 2011 culture in New York where there was a little bit of, like, "Who are you? Like, are you really one of us?" And I ended up making sure that I told a story because all of us had to go introduce ourselves, and ended up telling her the story of how this is very random, how I got into an argument when I was traveling in the Middle East with a cab driver because I was upset about something. And I think that they charged me the wrong fare. And so this woman looked at me like, oh, this woman isn't who I thought she was. She's not some kind of like nerd who just sits there and is quiet because that's my impression, because I'm actually quite shy. And so this story made her realize that I actually had a lot of gusto about me. And the next morning, she added me to the listserv. And so I had learned, you as a person who is traditionally shy, you kind of learn how people read the room about you. And so I always push myself to a point. I never push myself to be a different person because I just am not that person, but I can push myself enough to say, okay, I have this like arsenal of interesting stories where people can at least disabuse themselves of the stereotype of me. And so that's something that I use constantly because I don't prefer to be the person in the room who's nonstop talking. And if that's the person you're trying to get also, like if you're trying to network with a person who's nonstop talking, I've learned that that person is usually just more interested in themselves than in anyone else. So I move on.
Wow, that's some good advice there. And you're spot on with the last bit of advice. I can tell you that from my own experience. And so I see some really good questions coming in. But before I jump into those, I had another point. You spoke about it's not like one of the biggest strategies or so on that people think of, but being joyful, like that actually rang a bell with me because we know someone in common, I believe, Dr. Janice Johnson Dias, right? And
Yeah.
she just did her book, Parent Like It Matters, and it speaks about being
Yeah.
joyful. And I never thought about it in the way that she positioned it before she did, and not how it moves beyond parenting, just to who you are as a person, and how being joyful and open and generous can just open. You don't do it because you're looking for opportunities. You just be a good person and try to find the good things in life. But it does attract a particular energy. And so I thought that
Yeah.
that was an amazing point to share. So some of the questions that I see coming in, um, I think I'm not gonna maybe call the names because I'm not sure how everybody feels about that. Someone says, and this again is just a question, and all questions are welcome. She says, some women tend to have a trust deficit among each other within networks. How did you come across that, and how did you deal with it?
That is a really good question. I think it requires patience. Um, And, you kind of in everyday interactions, all of us have had interactions where we've had to build trust with someone again, right? It's like, when let's say it's a family member, it's not like you can say, okay, you're not a part of my life again. And it takes time and it takes patience. And I would use the same perspective when building trust in a network. Don't expect it to come overnight, but create the small meeting groups where you can start sharing about things that you are comfortable sharing. And each time, kind of just like get a little bit more vulnerable, get a little bit more vulnerable. So it stacks on top of itself. I think there's a rush to sometimes, at least in the US, I don't know the context in Jamaica. There's almost like fake authenticity that happens sometimes where people just like give you your whole life story in the beginning and then it feels very overwhelming. And that feels disingenuous. And so I do think it's about making sure you have a series of points of contact where you can get the same people together and just continue to build that connection, just like you would any other friendship.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it's very practical advice. I see a lot of questions coming in, and remember that you'll have another opportunity for those who don't get answered within the time window that we have, but some that I think would be beneficial for everybody. So people want to know a little bit more about your company, Sleuth. They also want to know, how do you go about protecting your ideas when you're networking, around that whole IP issue. And finally, I would say they wanted to kind of know, how do they set up a chapter of your, networking, Women in EdTech networking organization in Jamaica. Everybody's excited about that, and they'd like to know, how do you practically go about setting up that?
Sure. So I'm going to take the questions in reverse. I make sure that the questions about EdTech women have enough time. So setting up a chapter in Jamaica is fairly easy. All the instructions are on the EdTech Women website. And as long as you kind of commit to those three values and you use some of our kind of colors and fonts of the brand, you can really do whatever you want to do. And again, I would encourage you to not overly formalize it. If, I don't know how organizations are formed or not, but it doesn't have to be heavyweight. So don't make it so heavy in the beginning that you're worried about like a website and having the logo up or whatever. Just get people together, call it EdTech Women Jamaica, and connect. Because what often feels like the work is the logistics. No, the work is the community. And everything is on the website. It's very, very easy. In terms of protecting your ideas while networking, I think that goes back to the trust question a little bit. But I believe that, at least in the world that I'm in, there's no new idea. The difference is execution. And so, sometimes I may not tell everyone about what's happening in the back end with Sleuth, but the idea of Sleuth and whatever, it's an idea that's been applied in another circumstance. So sometimes if you figure out what you're comfortable sharing it with networking, someone could give you a really good add-on idea. And so I encourage you to think about sharing where you feel comfortable, because I think you'll be surprised about the added value that other people can give. So sleuth, it's like sleuth as in someone who's digging for answers. Um, it came from my experience because I had to leave my job. I worked at Kaplan, the education company, and I had to leave my job in 2018 because my daughter started presenting with a lot of symptoms. And so when I left my job, I realized that a lot of parents like me were hunting for information online on Facebook groups, and we just could not get good information about what specialists we should see, how to access therapies, how to deal with insurance. And other parents were the ones that were giving each other critical advice. And so, what we do is parents share their stories about their child's health symptoms and how they got answers. And we take those stories, they're submitted anonymously, and we turn it into data and insights that are available to parents of similar children using machine learning. So, I encourage you to share your stories about your children. It's safe and secure. But I did move out of EdTech a little bit, but there's a lot of adjacencies in the space as well.
Definitely. So, I mean, education is all about children, and children who learn and succeed, ideally we would like them to be well. So it's all connected, I believe. Um, there was another thing that you brought up about, and I'm very familiar with this, and I think there are women on the call who would be too, the kind of burden you feel at a particular point in the journey of entrepreneurship. For some people, it can be from the very start. Just having an idea, knowing that it's a good idea, that you want to move from an idea to an actual business, but just feeling so overwhelmed, whether at the start of the journey or, into it. Can you tell us some more about that kind of partnership you spoke about in terms of a co-founder, or, the way to offload, if that's the right term? But I think it's a brilliant insight and kind of strategy, because I do believe that a lot of good ideas have gone by the way, because the people who have them aren't necessarily the people who have to execute them, but they're not shared and they're just, stuck. So can you just tell us quickly about that?
Sure. Yeah, I think having a co-founder, and at least in my very personal situation, has been critical, not just because of the work distribution, but because we are a pair where actually very few of our skill sets are complementary. Our values are completely complementary, but our skill set is not. So Alex is a data scientist with a very strong product vision, and I'm a person who understands the market and does the external marketing and outreach and partnership distribution and sales. And so there is a rubric. I don't know what the source is, but there are questions that when you were thinking about a co-founder, there's like a resource where you ask, it's like 100 questions to make sure that you have the compatibility because you don't want to waste each other's time. But I think that in the co-founder matching process, it's actually hard to make. You should not make quick decisions about your co-founder. Go through the hard process. It's almost like relationship counseling. Like go through that hard process because if it works, it'll be really good. And if it doesn't work, you've kind of lost time. On the point of the kind of difficulty of managing business, that's very, very real. I mean, that is my number one struggle right now. It's like I have two little kids. I'm navigating an education system, quite frankly, in New York that I don't understand as someone who grew up in Virginia. And I have a business that is fundraising from VCs. And so the point about joy has been critical. And I love that book, Parenting Matters. It is like, I felt like I was so lucky to find that book because I was the type of parent that needed it so badly. But the point about joy is joy has to be the counter to the stress. Because if you don't have joy, you will burn out. Last summer, I burnt out. I could not get up off my bed. I thought that I would have to have surgery, but it ended up being stress. And so like 2 days ago, I went out for a walk at 4:30. I usually stop working around 5:30 or 5:45. And every day I bring in 15 to 20 minutes of like just joy, like no plans, nothing. Because if I don't start cultivating that habit, I will burn out for my business and my family, the two things that are the most important to me.
Brilliant advice. And I would encourage everyone to really take up that last point. I know, there are lots of other insights that were shared, but the context that we're in, most of us have been living and working through a pandemic. It's not business as usual. And so we have to just really learn to try our very best and balance as much as possible and find things to be happy and joyful about, even though we recognize that there is a lot of sadness around us and sometimes loss. So it's all about trying to find the balance. So thank you, Serene. I mean, there are lots of takeaways, and I encourage you to look her up, look her business up. It's Sleuth, as in Sleuth. So just look up online, and I'm sure the contacts and resources will be shared with all of you throughout the program. Remember that today is just the launch. It's not a one shot. You will have an opportunity to ask more questions, get access to resources, and perhaps network with speakers. So now maybe you're thinking, I want to launch my EdTech business or product, but I have no idea where to start. I probably know what I need to do in terms of networking and, some of the personal and professional characteristics I need to develop. But I want to know clearly what can I contribute to the sector. Now, if you're asking those questions, and you know that there are so many challenges to overcome outside of EdTech, even without the context of the US, for us here in Jamaica as women in business, as entrepreneurs, we know the challenges. As I said, access to finance is one, but there are so many more in terms of representation, not maybe in terms of color or race, but in terms of literally gender equality and parity, etc. We know those challenges. And you might be saying to yourself, why should I even bother? Can I make it? I know probably there are nobody like that on the call because, you're getting this opportunity because I know you have at least believe in your idea and yourself. Now, we want you to hear from Yulkendi Valdez, who is our next speaker, who knows a thing or two, I actually would say a thing or 100, about overcoming adversity and making success And so let me just share a little bit from her bio so you can get to know some more about her. So Yukendi is a Forbes 30 under 30 social entrepreneur, storyteller, and TEDx speaker. As the co-founder and CEO of Forefront, she helps employers, schools, and nonprofits create low-barrier, culturally relevant virtual experiences for young people 16 to 24 to facilitate their transition from education to career. And that sounds to me like it can apply in any setting, really. Yokeni brings a diverse set of both corporate and nonprofit experience to the table. She's worked with Bank of America, EY, Puma, and Innersight Consulting, as well as the International Institute of St. Louis and Betty Jean Kerr's People's Centers. Yulkendi has received numerous fellowships, including Resolution Project, Young People for Opportunity Nation Leaders Program, Future Founders Fellowship, Net Impact Racial Equity Fellowship, the Harvard Kennedy School of Public Policy Leadership Conference, One Young World, and so many more. She is a proud alumna of Babson College, the #1 school for entrepreneurship in the US. And more recently, she was named one of the Latino 30 under 30 honorees by El Mundo Boston and a top millennial in Boston by Get Connected. With roots in her hometown of St. Louis, Missouri, Yulkendi has traveled to over 30 countries for work and fun. So, with that being said, I want to now introduce you to Yulkendi, who is going to talk to us about various opportunities available to women in EdTech sector right now. Thanks for joining us and welcome, Yulkendi.
Oh, thank you so much for the kind introductions. It's an honor to be here in this room. And just the last conversation was powerful enough. I couldn't be where I am today without the power of community, relationships, and networking. And just, it's a funny story, but just to hear about Natalia and Pipeline Angels, I actually know her too, and she was a key inspiration in my work. So it shows how small this community of women and tech, even when we think about the global perspective, once we start getting to know each other, it leads to more and more relationships, and this is where all it starts. So I'm truly lucky to be here. And yeah, I remember meeting Natalia. Actually, we had to race her up a couple of stairs and introduced myself. It was super awkward, but I just wanted to meet her because she was also Latina and she was in technology, and I didn't have those examples. But I had learned early on that you do have to be uncomfortable with being uncomfortable, throwing yourself up there, asking for what you need. I think we hear the phrase elevator pitch a lot. I've thrown myself in many elevators, not being afraid to really meet people that I know are going to be powerful tool in my career. So we're going to talk more about what has worked for me, but I know you're experts too. Can't wait to meet you virtually in person. So this is only from my own experience, but again, I'm willing and wanting to learn from all of you as well today. And as you see, I'm not your traditional EdTech founder. In fact, I didn't start building a technology company. I started with a problem. I saw a lot of lack of diversity in corporations. I saw a lack of talking about race, gender, even in an international perspective. I'm from the Dominican Republic, and I was getting concerned with how even in the Dominican Republic, Dominican and Haitians weren't coming together. So a lot of my work just started building curriculum, training to bring people together. But eventually, after testing and piloting, we learned that we can scale that through technology. And we started looking at the power of texting, messaging, artificial intelligence to scale those conversations. And our platform became Carmen AI. And now we're using that platform to really provide career support to students and young people. So as you work, Carmen here, she speaks in Spanish and English. We mainly target it to a Hispanic audience here in the US, and that's why she speaks Spanish, but you can text her or in WhatsApp. ask Carmen, can you help me with my resume? And you get automated support and tips on how to improve your resume, your LinkedIn, prepare for interviews. But again, this was a process of 4 years. We did not start with technology. It was just doing pilots, being out there and learning where can we contribute and scale. So my first advice for you is again, don't think that you have to have it all together now. Just start, and that journey will bring out the answers that you need to build the right company for you. And as I mentioned, I'm actually Caribbean. I am from the Dominican Republic, but moved to the United States at 10, going 11. I didn't know a word of English, and I found myself in a lot of opportunities where I knew I was being put in a box as a woman. No one expected a Caribbean girl, for example, here when I was younger. I was doing spelling bee competitions. No one expected me to show up in spaces and win and succeed. And I was like, wait a minute, why are these limitations being put on me? And so I spent a lot of my early adult years trying to break those limitations by going to business school, by getting top jobs. But again, came across those same barriers of not having enough mentorship, network. So I thought, what can I do to create the platform so that other young people don't have to go through what I have to go through? And so this work, it's very personal. And being a founder in EdTech, what keeps me going is that this is connected to my own experience, my own lived experience. So it's important to, when building EdTech products, to start with something that you truly care about, you experience yourself, because when you're forcing it and trying to become something you're not, it's harder to be successful, because committing to an EdTech venture is, it's like a decade of your life, right? 7 to 8 years to really build a company, grow it or sell it or pass it on. So it's a long-term commitment. So you want it to be something that is truly connected to your identity and your purpose. And that's something that I've done. But in terms of why I chose EdTech and the opportunities there, as we see, especially with a pandemic, this is a time to be in education technology. It is ripe for innovation, right? Schools, higher education, everything is in flux. It's time to create new systems that work for the next generation of kids. And it's also a beautiful industry because it's one where, yes, you can make money and really grow, but education is a place where you can make a lot of impact, because education has a ripple effect into healthcare, into food, into the criminal justice system, into everything we do. If we have better education systems, we're going to have a better society. So for me, that's why I'm so passionate about the EdTech community and making sure we're coming together to create innovation. And what we've seen is that, it is a huge industry, worldwide $7 trillion industry. So when someone tells you, oh, that's small business or education, no, it's actually big business, big money to be made, and a lot of opportunity because of disruption around technology that is happening now. And so one of our investors out of Boston, Learn Launch, and I'm going to link their newsletter. I know a lot of you were asking about resources. They put out a lot of events, webinars. I sign up for every newsletter to stay in the know what's happening. If you can also try Google Alerts, that's another tip, and you can set EdTech as a Google Alert, and you can get daily emails. So you can read tons of these articles and research. But Learn Launch, we follow a lot, and we've gone through their programming. They talk about the complex market forces that are coming together, right? The market vulnerabilities that are in place, and now with the pandemic, those vulnerabilities are even wider, right? Because now we're seeing the gaps that students that are coming out of school are not equipped, prepared for the workforce, or students in our classrooms, they're not getting the opportunity to succeed in assessments. The curriculum is not as personalized, culturally relevant. So there's a lot of market vulnerabilities, and it's all about picking one. Sometimes we want to solve this huge fish, but actually when picking out small fish, you can actually build a bigger business out of it. So even by even by helping narrow markets, special populations, you can do a lot of good. And then once you actually find that problem, that market vulnerability, you can test different innovations and technologies that might solve that problem effectively. A lot of people start the other way around. They try to find a cool technology, um, but they don't really have a problem in mind, and that ed tech venture is gonna fail. It's good to start with that problem, that market vulnerability, and then test different technical innovations like VR, artificial intelligence, machine learning. Um, there's a lot out there, but the technology can get very distracting and sexy. But it's important to remember what we're solving here. Are we looking to support personalized learning? Are we looking to help young people get ready for careers? What is that mission, that goal? And that tech would always align later. So definitely keep in mind those opportunities, and sign up for the Learn Launch newsletter. And we'll make sure to also follow up over email, and in the chat as well. But I don't like only selling the opportunities, the good. Again, this is a long-term commitment. So you have to recognize, just like any industry, there's pitfalls, right? It might take longer to raise money in education technology because it takes growth, takes a lot of time, right? You're building an education product that has impact on kids' life. We're not building a Facebook or an Instagram or a game, right? That they can grow and they don't have to care about the consequences till later. So education has a lot of responsibility, but it's worthwhile once you go through that process. And in ed tech sales cycles, when you're selling to school systems, government institutions, it can get complicated. It takes a lot of relationship building, and that's why we started talking about networking earlier. So it's something that it's good to have a co-founder or build a team around you that complements your skills. I'm certainly an introvert too, shy, so I had to find a co-founder that complemented their way they build relationships too, so we can support one another in that process. So I definitely recommend having a co-founder as well to navigate these pitfalls together. Awesome. But having said that, a lot good is ahead. As you see, just this past year, EdTech is getting a lot of attention. So it's a time to do it because people are listening. They know we need more virtual solutions. So it is exciting. And I'm seeing more women, like here in the US, Amanda getting funding. And she just raised, for example, 2.3 million. And she started being a teacher, right? Not your traditional tech founder. But everything is possible once you get out there, pilot, and build that credibility. No one can say, they shouldn't give you funding if you're if you're being successful in your business. But to do that, again, it takes a community, because it can be really isolating, exhausting, and overwhelming. So I make sure to go, whether dancing, hiking, doing very personal things that are not work related with my other EdTech founders. And in that way, we naturally start thinking about each other. Hey, check out this opportunity, check out this program. Hey, I got this grant, because you invest in building those genuine relationships. So I also highly recommend that as well. Awesome. So in terms of just quick tips to end the day, and summarizes my journey, even though I'm in year 4, I'm still investing a lot in customer discovery. It can be easy to go and just pitch your idea and sell, but ideally what you should be doing is really just learning and asking about the problem. So if you're selling a product to teachers, talking to teachers about their experiences in the classrooms, what's going well, what is not, without even selling your idea. And a book that I recommend that really helped me do that in a really good way is called The Mom Test. It has a funny name, but trust me, you can read it really quick. They also have audio, and it has a lot of practical toolkits you can use. And what you might find is that in not selling, you actually end up selling. You gain that trust, and then people want to work with you more. And once I go through those interviews, what I had to really keep in mind is prioritize focus. So when you're in education and you want to solve big problems, you want to, I want a business that's going to change the way schools run. But in reality, again, you got to get really narrow and focus on selling to a specific group if you want to succeed. So I recommend to do that customer segmentation exercise. Don't do it all at once. Focus on one small piece at a time, and eventually you'll connect the dots. And again, I can help send some tools over emails, and this will be discussed in webinars. But a lot of the advice I got along the way was to definitely focus and prioritize. And then when it's time, definitely when you see the opportunity, sell unapologetically. You know, as women, I have a male co-founder. I learned that I was reluctant, you know, I was shy, like to just throw myself. I hated the idea of selling, you know, and asking and talking about money. But the reality is I really had to get unapologetically about doing it, because when it's your business, it's your baby, you know, that you have to get out there and sell it. No one else is going to sell it better than you. But there's a strategy to that. And this book changed my life as well, especially if you're selling to organizations, not just to people, to parents per se, or kids. If you're selling to schools, you have to understand how to meet different people within the institution, how to find your champions. So I also recommend this book, New Strategic Selling. And like we were saying in the last presentation, I'm glad that there's so much overlap. Again, this is a long journey. You know, I've been fundraising and find myself in environments when it's exhausting and I'm crying at the end of the day. And you just got to invest in your own self-care. For me, it's travel. You heard that in the bio. So figure out what that is for you. Don't feel shame. You know, I think as founders, we hear you got to work, but definitely take that time for yourself and create your own schedule, because it is a long, long journey, especially in education. And what I find when I take those breaks, I actually come up with the best ideas for the business. And I would say this, as you know, a lot of what I said today wasn't about fundraising, getting money. At the end of the day, we get so distracted. I heard the quote Shireen was saying, setting up a chapter is not about the logistics, it's about the community. It applies to a business. The business is not about fundraising. The business is about doing the work, experimenting, piloting. The fundraising would come, but understand that, you know, we are all come from different situations. So I definitely have to go out there, hustle, find grants, find different ways to do it and get money so I can do the business. So there's more than one ways to do it. Don't just follow one standard of what you hear about technology and founders. You can do it your own way. So thank you so much for listening, and I'm excited to continue to connect with all of you.
Thank you very much, Yilkendi. I think that was a very good presentation, because you not only shared with us about your experience and your business, but you gave some very practical insights. So just to recap for everybody who is on the call, tuning into the live stream. So, you know, first you started out by talking about the importance of not limiting yourself entering the edtech sector, because you're not the typical, you know, founder, which unfortunately in our space for sure are usually men, you know, who probably have a certain profile and, you know, maybe have come with some experience in tech itself. But you gave us some advice about looking at the problem, starting with the problem, having a real passion to solve that problem, and then seeing how technology can help to innovate and to create solutions. And I think that that actually is a perfect definition for EdTech. It's not, EdTech is not about attracting people who are tech geeks or, you know, have years and decades of experience in technology. It's about people who are looking at the current problems of their communities, of their societies, of whatever group you identify with, and seeing how you can use technology to drive innovation and solutions. I think that's an excellent definition. We also touch on the value of EdTech. beyond the 7 trillion global industry value, there's the value of the opportunity that you all have to influence, shape, and impact generation, the current generation, but more importantly, the young people who are going to move into an era that has started that will be knowledge driven, it will be digital, and it will be heavily connected to technology. And so there is an opportunity, especially for people of color and for the Caribbean, which we are small in our size but large in our impact, for us to carve out a space there. Um, you also spoke about, and this is a big touch point for me personally, people who know my work, talking about youth and students, and really, really love the story of your business in terms of that, filling that gap, providing that bridge, that knowledge bridge, in terms of how do you move from being a student to having the skills that you not only need to survive, but to thrive in this era. So upskilling, creating culturally relevant materials and learning, very important. And you shared with us one of the things I loved as well as a publisher is that you inserted books in there to, point us to resources that can help us to learn more outside of your presentation. And the points, customer discovery is very important, customer segmentation, selling unapologetically. And I think for women, because as I think I pointed out earlier, if you're not even an entrepreneur, you're just going in for a job opportunity, women tend to always, and I'm not speaking from my opinion, there's actually data to support this about what we ask for in terms of salaries when we're negotiating, and even how we go after opportunities because of how we've been cultured to kind of, some of us be meek and mild, whereas, our male counterparts or others will be more aggressive and be more open to having discussions about money and negotiating opportunities that are at a next level that can transform yourself and your business. So that was a very, very good tip as well. Invest in your self-care, can't overstate that. I think even those of us who are practicing self-care, you always have to just keep checking in with yourself, because self-care looks different at different levels. So the journey that you're on today, self-care might be going to get an ice cream after work, but if your business grows at a particular level, and the stress level grows with it, it might mean disconnecting for a week and going to a new country or something along that line. So let us check in the chat and see if we have any questions. So somebody says they're very interested to learn more about the Carmen, the AI app. They wanted to kind of know, get some more information about it and find out the thought process, which I think you kind of started sharing, but maybe you could tell us some more about that.
Yes, of course. And I can actually share it real quick. So this is the web version, but obviously we've doubled down on creating a full text messaging service, right? Because not every student has Wi-Fi at home, but they at least have a phone where they can text. So they would text Carmen like a family or friend. You would save Carmen as a phone number. But here via the web, just so you can see it, Carmen, I got my caps wrong. Carmen gets to know you. So what we mean by culturally relevant, she cares about the students' hobbies, their pronouns, how do they say their name, and she collects all that information so we can give them more personalized coaching. So essentially, we're using conversational AI to automate a lot of what takes counselors in schools or teachers a lot of time, like having to review resumes by hand or helping students with resume, while giving them more personalized coaching. Because let's say if they don't speak English, Carmen can speak in another language. Or if, let's say, if they're from a different culture, ethnicity, Carmen can present role models that look like them so they don't feel isolated. So that's how the tool works. It is all happening by texting. They can send pictures and videos to make it even more accessible. And I'm happy to share more about our website. But this is something that we started with a very easy MVP. We actually started with Facebook Messenger chatbot program, so we didn't have to build our own. Then we got an engineer full time. So again, with everything, these processes, I recommend iteration, being adaptive. For those that are you starting out, I know some of you call are already way in advance, but there's easy ways to pilot and MVP a lot of these technologies without costing a lot of money.
Right. So that thanks for that demo of Carmen. I was going to ask if it actually was a chatbot, but you answered that question for us. I saw somebody asking about will you be sharing your presentation, and I saw that right away. You responded, and the link to the presentation is actually in the chat, guys. So you can have a look there and find it, download. Somebody wanted for you to dive in a little bit deeper on the customer segmentation. They wanted to just understand that some more.
Yeah, so right away we might be compelled, like, well, everybody has this problem, so let's sell to schools, let's sell to parents, sell to governments and everywhere at once. But once you do that, it's really hard to build a product roadmap, understand what's more important to your product and your value proposition. So yes, your business can grow as much as you want, but it's important to start selling to a specific type of customer with a very small niche need. And then as you grow, you can expand again to other customers. You can build, make your products do more things or even build new products. So a customer segmentation exercise will simply allow you to rank them to see which one you should do first based on timing, based on how large the budget is for this particular customer, the money opportunity. So you can kind of rank and start by one. And if the first one doesn't work, that's okay because you have other customer to explore.
Okay.
And
Another
again, that
question I
program.
wanted to ask was, in your business, how have you, or just your experience as a woman in EdTech, what's been the experience in terms of recruitment? Like, how is it in your space in the US? And I'm assuming or asking if you do work in DR as well. What are you, in terms of when you started out versus now? Are you seeing a difference in terms of the ease of recruiting other women into EdTech?
Is it recruiting employees or
Be recruiting
want to clarify
employees
the
or
question?
just getting people interested in the area in terms of
Got it.
studying or yeah.
Yeah. Definitely I see it growing. I think there's a lot of women still struggling to call themselves like ed tech founders because they might have an organization in education, but they don't feel part of the tech um, community. So I do a lot of work to say, yes, we do belong. What we're doing is ed tech, right? Because this space is little about the technology, more about that mission and how we're doing it in that secret sauce. So definitely we can do a lot of work to continue to empower each other and remind us that yes, we do belong. We're doing great work. And definitely I'm seeing a lot of exciting communities popped up of more and more people building incredible solutions. So I'm often in the phone with high school students, for example, building mentoring platforms or scholarship platforms as well. And they're just iterating, starting with very simple websites to mobile apps, and they're doing this from high school. So it's really exciting.
Yeah, well, thank you. I think you've shared like a whole lot of practical information between your presentation and Serene's. I think there's a lot for our participants and for those who are joining us virtually to dive into, to think about, and to kind of position their own ideas, their own, concepts, or if they have an actual business right now, how to really move from where they are to growing it to our next level. So thank you very much for that presentation. And unfortunately, I know that you all love the program that we've had this afternoon and you don't want it to come to an end, but unfortunately, it has to wrap up. And so the program is going to wrap up, but the conversation has just started. There's a lot to take away from this. And I think I have to underscore or restate this because it's so important that, don't think about the traditional definitions. If there's any time to do away with tradition, it is right now. The pandemic has taught us that a lot of the ways that we thought about how we live, work, learn, earn, all those things are being redefined at lightning speed. And so your thinking has to shift along with it. You don't shift as a person, you maintain your values and your passions, etc. But the way how you think and maybe the boxes that you put yourself in, it's time to break free of those. So I want to thank everyone who has joined us for the live stream of this program, our participants, the 37 women joining us from Jamaica and our US counterparts, our speakers, everybody online. We appreciate your support and interest. Our appreciation goes out to Chargé McIntyre, who joined us earlier and delivered remarks, to Minister Williams as well, who gave a solid commitment and who I know we can look forward to supporting not only the program, but when these women move from idea or from wherever they are in business to the next level, that the ecosystem of support will be there in the formal policy and government to support them. We're just happy about all of that at the launch of Power Connect. And of course, our deepest thanks to the US keynote speakers, Serena and Yulkendi. I think you guys did a very, very good job of engaging us, of keeping it very real, keeping it very practical and very insightful, things that we can take away and apply immediately. Love that about the presentations. They were very valuable contributions today. And so we thank all of you again for joining us for the launch of Power Connect. For our program participants, as I said earlier, this is just the start, right? It's the whetting your appetite part of it. You will be getting your main course over the following weeks through a series of webinars that will take place over days. You're going to look out for additional program details from Kingston Power, so you will get your unique communication about what to expect next, what are the next steps, and most of all, the lesson that we learned from both speakers today: stay connected, network, be authentic, make space for others, be generous, be kind, share ideas, of course, carefully, but learn to open up and to trust, and in giving, you will receive. Thank you all, and see you all again very soon.